Start your engines, people. This is Overdrive. My name is Brendan Dunlop. Happy to be back here in the saddle as Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog are away. And happy to have Dave Feshik alongside me for the third day in a row. I guess they like us, man.
We're still here.
Dave and Dunlop, still here on the Overdrive desk.
Yes, indeed.
MLB All-Star Week, always fun, leaves us with so much to talk about, right? There's so much happening in the sports world. I say that jokingly, obviously. But
hey, man, is Vladdy Guerrero Jr. going to recruit Shohei Ohtani to Toronto? Like, there's lots to talk about.
Yeah, there is lots to talk about.
The whole baseball world is clamoring, begging, pleading, chanting to get Shohei Ohtani on their side as they were in Seattle last night. And it's something to behold, isn't it? Like, we've never seen an athlete like this.
No.
And we've definitely never seen a ball player like this. And the idea that we're going to the trade deadline and then free agency with him, 30 teams are hoping maybe there's a chance.
And someone that's in that rare category where you know they're going to be one of the highest paid people of all time, right? There's only a handful of guys like that.
Maybe, well, what's the highest soccer contract?
Well, since Saudi Arabia got into the sport the last 6 months, who really knows?
Yeah.
But Cristiano Ronaldo supposedly making 250 million euros a year. That's what, 600 Canadian?
So, so he's the highest. Yeah. So Shohei's not going to make that.
The Messi deal is, there's a lot of layers to the Messi deal. People say it rivals the Ronaldo deal. People say that the Sporting Kansas City, Major League Soccer, actually put together a package for Ronaldo that rivaled Saudi Arabia. So, like, that type of money exists, obviously, in North American sports, and it's out there. But for Shohei, it's just like, you know, people will do whatever possible, move mountains. I bet you if a team had to relocate, they'd relocate to get this guy. Honestly,
they could.
Yeah.
If they could.
It would be beneficial for some teams, but for some teams like Seattle, who had the fans chanting, we want come to Seattle?
Come to Seattle.
Come to Seattle. Would make sense. The North American chants are very simple, right? Go Leafs, go. Go Canada, go. Come to Seattle. Like,
what else is there?
Just simplify it. Well,
keep it simple.
There's a lot. I mean, you can look at the English. You can make a song about anything.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, when you get into the elaborate soccer songs.
Yeah, you can the On Fire. I actually forget the name, but someone's on fire. No, 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 no. Everyone's got one of those jams.
You got to know a lot of lyrics.
You would have to know a lot of lyrics.
Like, do they hand out like lyric sheets,
like song sheets?
Or what do they do? I was at a Duke game. You know, the Duke basketball fans, the Dukies, they go nuts. And I've been to a few of the games there over the years. And they actually do hand out little
program
cue sheets for the student section.
Okay.
Like, we're going to chant this, we're going to chant that. You know, this is the song we're going to sing here. So they're cheating a little bit. It's not spontaneous.
What if you're outside of the student section? I mean, I guess like down there in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and those arenas are actually smaller.
It's very small.
I saw Michigan State in Lansing, and the student section was the equivalent to what you would say like a way support is, road support in soccer, where it was large, but it wasn't the majority. Mm-hmm. The majority were older fans. The majority were actually considerably older fans. I was the in-between on the younger side of non-student, but not a Lansing regular there.
Right.
So did it get passed around to all the sections, or just the students had this?
I mean, the students make up a huge amount of that Cameron Indoor Stadium, right? So, and they've really, I like the fact that they've prioritized the students there, right? Like you go to some schools and they prioritize the rich alumni. Of
course.
And they get the best seats.
Most schools.
And the students are kind of maybe on the end or over in a corner somewhere. But at Duke, the students kind of built that place, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly made it famous, along with Coach K and a lot of good, NBA players that have come through there. But yeah, I'm just like, those soccer chants are amazing. I don't know how they do them. Like, it's amazing. Like,
it's a lot to keep up with, right? Yeah. It does feel like a part-time job. Like, I'll even admit that. And I've got season tickets at TFC that I've kept in the South End since I've had the same seats, I think, since season 3. I've been there since season 1. And there's quite a few songs where, like, I feel out of the loop now. I guess it's part of, the aging process and being a fan. I still go, not as often as I'd like, but I still go when I can. And there's definitely every season a new song. I'm like, what is this one? I miss that. I don't know how to stay updated on this thing.
You got to like tune into some sort of like season ticket holder message board where they post the next lyrics.
I mean, there's a lot of that. Yeah, I'm not reading the comments section on Waking the Red every day.
Right.
So I guess I'm missing out on it. That's
yeah, but you're right. Like Raptorland, it's basically "Let's go Raptors, go." It's like "Ref, you suck." I think the most prominent chant in Raptorland lately is "Ref, you suck." That's kind of the NBA in general, right?
But in Raptorland especially, though.
Yeah.
It does feel like a plague, right? Like you just have this anticipation. The Leafs are going to lose in the first round.
Yeah.
The Raptors are going to get screwed over by the refs. Canada's going to lose to the U.S. in soccer. It just feels that way.
It's true.
It's just kind of a constant.
It does feel that way. And you know what? And the Raptor fans kind of have that conspiracy theory vibe to them. They always have. Like going back to, oh, we're going to lose Vince. And yeah, we lost Vince. Oh, we're going to lose. Well, even before that, we're going to lose McGrady. Yeah, we lost McGrady.
Yeah.
Oh, even Butch Carter, when he was coaching, used to say, well, there are powers that be that don't want the Raptors to succeed. They don't want us to have good players. So there's been executives that have fueled that fire too over the years.
It's because it's felt real.
Yeah.
People say, is it perception or reality? If you're living it constantly, then is your perception not your own reality?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And for those guys especially, like I think I'm glad you mentioned Butch Carter because I think a lot of people say that Sam Mitchell overused that. But I actually think he held back.
Yeah.
I think he held back in comparison to some of the guys before or certainly what he could have said.
I think Sam kind of was on the different track. Like Sam, I think when he came here, maybe, he'd been a player. So he obviously played in Toronto as a visiting player. But he was won over to the city and he was like, there's no reason why we can't be good here. Like, everybody loves this city. It's a great place to live, and if the weather's not great, well, the weather's not great in Cleveland. It's not great in half the U.S. markets, right? It's not great in New York City.
Good point.
So
good point.
Sam was more, I think, way more realistic. Colangelo definitely played that card. Even Masai Ujiri's played that we're underdog card. Nobody cares about us card. And certainly the pandemic fueled that when they were the only NBA team that had to relocate in Tampa, and that certainly hurt them. Set them back in the post-championship era, and then maybe they haven't recovered from that in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, in terms of conspiracy theories and kind of and sort of letting your fan anxiety come out in the form of the way you express yourself in the arena, I think the Raptor fans do it pretty well.
Yeah. What would sports be without conspiracy theories at some point, though, right? I mean, what would we have to talk about? You talk about, being a legend in the city. We'll have one of those on the show. Doug Gilmour going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll talk about what's happening in the NHL, what's happening with the Leafs, get into some story time with him. We had that with Peter Holland yesterday, which I enjoyed. I'd love to hear what Dougie has to say. He's a big, he's also a big golf guy? Doug Gilmour did he have his own charity tournament?
I'm sure he plays
I think
golf.
I'm confusing here.
But I don't know. I've never talked to Dougie about golf. Usually when it's when we're talking to the killer, we're talking about 93. We're talking about relentlessness. We're talking about. You mean you can actually win playoff series when you're a Maple Leaf? You mean you can actually get like on the precipice of going to the Cup final when you're a Maple Leaf? Like I've heard it's impossible. But Dougie led a team that was a game away.
I did a speaking event at an elementary school in Woodbridge a few years ago with Matthew Shinetti. And the kids asked a bunch of questions. What's it like to be on TV? Do you wear makeup? Yada, all the usual. And it was a bunch of boys that had asked the question. And so one of the female teachers says, there's got to be girls out here with some questions. Ask Matthew and Brendan some questions. And so this girl puts her hand up, comes up to the microphone. She pulls out a piece of paper from her pocket, and she says, this one's for Brendan. Do you think that was a penalty in 1993?
There you go.
And I started dying laughing because I was like, your dad wrote that question this morning. He told me we were coming to your school to speak to you. And I love that. So, yeah, I feel like he must get asked that annually.
You know what? And he is.
Monthly.
And Dougie Gilmour is one of the great interviews. Like, he'll answer it. Like, he doesn't get tired about talking about 93. Neither all those guys from that era. It's kind of interesting to me that in today's team, there are guys on the Leafs today who sort of treat the media like it's a massive bird, like doing the scrum, hearing some questions from Mark Masters and Jonas Siegel. It's like the worst thing that ever happened to them in their life, Like it's just so tough, right? Mm-hmm. And yet the guys from the previous era that actually succeeded and got way deeper into the playoffs and played under way more pressure with way higher stakes, they were never like that, and they still aren't like that. And they'll talk about it to anybody that wants to ask them. They're gracious about it. It's just another hockey game. We played it. We lost it. Oh, well, we won a bunch of other ones. We would have loved to win a cup, obviously. But, Yeah, it's funny how it's shifted. Like there's a different perception of the way media, should be used, should be approached. I'm not saying I'm generalizing, and
Sure,
there's definitely
I
guys
know.
in that locker room in the Leafs today that are great with the media.
And
Some guys that
personable.
aren't.
But there's a protectionism, I think, that
Yeah.
a lot more of these guys, particularly these star guys, particularly these superstar youngsters have that didn't maybe exist, certainly when Doug was playing, but maybe even when you started going into rooms 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Right? You
sure.
still do the room on a regular basis?
yeah, I still go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun when it's like we kind of lost it for 2+ years there with the pandemic, and,
Right.
and you miss going in there. But yeah, this playoff run we were all back in there, and it's great. Like when you actually have the time to sidle up to guys and you just shoot the breeze about life and the games. And sometimes it's on the record. Sometimes you're just chatting about restaurants and golf and this city, that city, what's like to live here, what's it like to live there. Guys like Luke Shen were in there holding court. Ryan O'Reilly was holding court. But Austin Matthews wasn't.
No.
Mitch Marner wasn't. Those guys treat it like we don't need to talk to those people, do we?
Like a contractual obligation is how
exactly.
they treat it, right?
Why would I ever speak to the unwashed with those notebooks and recorders? And I'm not like, I don't care if you do. Like, I really don't care. I seriously do not care if you do or you don't. It's just an observation.
Sure.
And I think it speaks to the way you kind of look at life and maybe the way you look at the game and the way and what the game means. And maybe one of Luke Shen's theories was the Maple Leafs think too much about the game instead of just going out and living life. Like they put too much pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that.
We talked about that yesterday with Peter Holland and how, the stories that we've heard about this team doesn't socialize on the road the way that teams just traditionally have for decades. And the way they socialize has changed, but the way, this team particularly has socialized is very individual, very isolated. And maybe over the course of, an 82-game regular season and then what you would hope would be a 2.5-month postseason, you don't have that natural kind of chemistry there because you've not been building it off of the ice.
Yeah.
And if the game is on your mind all the time and the game is all you're thinking about, then there isn't a space for life, and you kind of need that to have a balance to be better at your game.
Yeah. And look, I mean, they've put all kinds of points on the board, and they've all got great individual numbers, and we know the regular season point tallies, but it just hasn't come together at the right time, right? And the one step forward they took against Tampa, they took a big step back against Florida when they didn't show up in Game 3, and then it did not go well the rest of the way. There's something missing there. And Brendan Shanahan certainly has never shown an aptitude for figuring out what it is. We'll see if Brad Treliving has any better luck.
Yeah, on that point of how new players and this new generation deals with the media, social media. This is a constant as we've got a new social media platform for players to use, experiment, get in trouble on with threads. What do you think of how this generation uses social? Maybe Twitter, because I think Twitter is the place where athletes kind of first got in trouble, right? I think with Instagram, there's a safety. It's not as reactionary. You can control the narrative. You can control the image.
Tell that to John Morant.
Yeah, tell that to John Morant. I mean, it does seem like, and I've heard this over and over again, especially if you talk to, I'm sure you've had, conversations with older players, that Doug Gilmour generation, one of the first things they say is, glad we didn't have Twitter back then.
Oh, yeah.
Glad we didn't have camera phones back then. It would be totally different. For someone like John Morant, wasn't in LeBron's class. He's had 10 years to see the mistakes of guys before him. And yet we still see players, step in it, put their foot in their mouth and do something wrong.
Going IG Live.
Oh, man.
Showing the guns.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the older guys have gotten in trouble with IG Live too. Ray Allen was someone you'd think would know better.
Yeah.
That kind of changed his career.
Yeah, was it Ray Allen or Paul Pierce, was it? I don't know.
Oh, excuse me, Paul Pierce. Yes, it was.
Paul
My
Pierce.
apologies. It was
Let's
Paul
not
Pierce.
besmirch Mr.
Yes,
Allen.
no.
Allen's lived a very respectable life. Paul Pierce, I got a lot of respect for him.
Yeah.
But, some of his choices.
Made a mistake at IG Live. He got carried away on the gram.
Let's just say some of those life choices were not compatible with being employed by the Walt Disney Company.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
On Ray Allen, though, got to do more movies.
Yeah.
He Got Game was a very good movie, I thought.
He's a Shuttleworth, yeah.
For someone who hadn't played a game in the NBA yet, right?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a good question.
Did they film that before? I think they
Still
filmed
at
it before
UConn?
the season started.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the timing. I've seen the movie a couple times, loved it. But man, he was great. I mean, Spike Lee, for him to cast a real player in that role, you needed a real player. You couldn't have a fake player because you had to have real scenes with real shooting and real skill.
But in comparison to the Adam Sandler movie with the other Hernan Gomez,
yeah,
where they didn't give him as much of a speaking role as Jesus Shuttleworth had, where he was a lead actor.
He was good
in that movie.
He was really good.
I wonder if he just lost the bug.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
See that? What was that called? I forget now, but Grappler, what was that movie called?
With the one I was just speaking about.
Yeah.
With Adam Sandler?
Yeah. The Diamond something?
No, that was that not two different movies? There was Hustle was the one.
Hustle. Yeah, I'm thinking of the gambling one with Sandler. Yeah, there was also the gambling one with Sandler, which Kevin Garnett made an appearance in, right?
Right. Kevin Garnett. I think there was another prominent figure, but it was Anthony Edwards was the villain.
Yes.
And
he was great.
He was excellent. Yeah, he was excellent.
Real charisma there.
So maybe it's all about characters, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, to your point, I think social media has been great for these guys. I mean, you see who they are. Like, you see that Kevin Durant, along with being a person that is very approachable and a really nice person, I think, in my experience. I mean, I don't know him intimately, but certainly I know people who've coached him. I know people who spent a lot of time with him, and I certainly have come across him a few times over the years in media circles. An interesting guy, but also, tissue paper thin sensitive, right? Like in terms of, and it tells you something about how he sees himself and how he needs constant affirmation, even though he's one of the greatest players of all time. It doesn't take much to get under his skin.
And I think that goes to the point with some of these guys we talk about where it seems like such an obligation to speak to the media. They seem very, protective. It's because of that, because they are afraid that they won't be able to handle the punches, that they don't want to see the knives that come out. And it's just kind of easier that way. Keep their head down, do what they're obligated to do as much as they can personally, build their own brand that way, focus on their game. But there definitely is, I think, not disservice, but there's a negative to being so into the game all the time and also being afraid. Yeah. If you're constantly afraid this person's out to get me, you're going to carry that into other things in your life.
Totally.
And you can only kind of stay in that mode for, I think, a temporary period before it becomes really negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always surprised that players spend as much time, looking through their mentions or searching their own name, which I hear, and I'm hearing this more from the players. Generally don't talk about it, but you do hear it from, general managers, assistant general managers, player wellness people. That's a whole new field in pro sports.
Sure.
The player wellness department. We're talking about mental health plus physical health and all the rest of it. You hear that social media and the strain of social media is a real problem for a lot of players. It leads to mental health issues. It leads to confidence issues and lack of confidence issues mostly. It leads to also, on the other side of it, it leads to a delusion about how good you are.
Right.
Because, I remember Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, said very early on in the internet era that the problem with the internet and social media would be the thing that followed is that everybody has fans. Like, you can convince yourself that you're great because you're like, even 2-bit sports writers have a couple people that like their writing. Many more people that don't like their writing. But
I've always liked your writing,
yeah,
man.
But I mean, and I know you see what I mean. He was saying, like, basically anybody that does anything in the world can have a little cult of fans that will build them up to believe they're better than they are. There's also the opposite of that. There's, everybody will tell you how terrible you are on social media for sure.
I've got a few of those this week.
Yeah. Well, for sure. It's part and parcel with being on OverDrive when you're not the ODOC. I mean, at Hayes and Noodles. But, the thing with that is the side that I think Fred VanVleet was talking about the other day on a podcast with some ex-NFLers was some of these younger players that have grown up in social media. They've basically been told they're great their entire lives.
Right.
They've had IG accounts. They've been the star. They've been 5-star recruits. They've been, YouTube legends from very young ages.
From AAU.
Yeah. And so they've got almost a delusional mentality about how good they are. They have very little context about where they fit in the grand scheme of basketball history.
Right.
But they've been told they're great. And guess what? They're also super rich all of a sudden because they've been given tens and close, very soon hundreds of millions of dollars. So Fred VanVleet was talking about that generation gap in the NBA now, where the guys who didn't really grow up with social media in that way, and maybe especially guys like Fred who've actually had to really grind to get to the top of the league after being an undrafted guy, they have a totally different experience than a guy like Scotty Barnes, who's a fourth overall pick and 21 years old and has just been handed the world, is on TV in Toronto every 3 seconds, it seems, in every possible ad that you can imagine. I went through Yonge Dundas Square today. There's Scotty Barnes, 65 feet high,
selling you
chilling
something.
another thing.
Right.
I've lost track of all the stuff he shills. Right?
Yeah, he's got a lot.
And you know what? I don't know how much the Scotty Barnes endorsements had to do with the fracture in the Raptors locker room this year. Certainly, we heard Scotty say he wasn't in sufficient shape. He said it himself. He needed to be in better shape. We heard that we saw the Thad Young thing where Scotty wasn't listening to a 35-year-old veteran when Thad Young was trying to tell him something at halftime in that game in January. You see these little things, and I'm sure there's a much bigger picture under the surface that we're not seeing. But it's led to friction in the Raptors. I think it's led to friction throughout pro sports.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had this conversation yesterday too about age gaps. With Major League Baseball All-Star Game, we talk a lot about baseball having an aging fan base. What do you do to hook a younger fan base? How do you keep it sustainable? How do you stay relevant in an incredibly competitive market that now is not just continental, it's absolutely global? Last night, despite what I thought wasn't the most exciting game, because I like when there's runs. In general, in baseball, I like when there's runs. I can appreciate pitching duels. I can appreciate good pitching very much so.
Outfield defense. Saw some of that last night.
I can appreciate some outfield defense. Anyone who's watched Kevin Kiermaier play, no matter where he's playing in the AL East, can appreciate some good outfield defense. But in an all-star game like that, I do want to see a game have more than 5 runs.
Sure.
What they did have, what I thought was on display well, was the superstar power that I think can mesh these two generations of fans. And there's 2 guys in particular. And we saw a clip, I think it was a Japanese TV broadcast clip that went viral. Shohei Ohtani's doing an interview, and behind him is Vladdy Guerrero Jr.
Yes.
And we can run with that however you want. And Dave, I'm going to run with it with he's recruiting.
No doubt.
Vladdy's recruiting Shohei Ohtani
Very subtle
to
recruiting.
Toronto.
Charming recruiting.
But I see, even just like a subtle clip like that, where they're just having fun with each other, but then they're showing a bit of personality. And you can say that Ohtani just kind of, he smiles when the camera's on, but he's not looking for it. He's certainly not. It doesn't seem like someone that needs the glam all the time. It's a constant. He knows it's there. And we see that Ichiro was like this too. They just knows that it's there. You're seeing the clip on TSN 2 right now. There's personality with these guys that I really like. And the fact that these 2 are amongst the best at what they're actually doing. I love the fantasy of them playing together, but I just love that baseball has more of these guys than I think we've acknowledged or have come to the forefront in the last few years.
Yeah. And that was, a game last night with 2 of the best guys, Trout and Judge. Not there.
Yeah.
So, you're right. 3-2 could have done with 7-5. I know the Grappler. How long did you wait last night for your over to come in, Grappler? You picked the over on the FanDuel best bets.
Oh, I was watching right till the end, just hoping that hoping that Craig Kimbrell would just blow it up and no, who was it? Sorry, who was it that was on the mound that closed it out for the National League?
That's a good question.
No, I'm not even sure.
I went to bed.
Anyways, yeah, I stayed up right till the end. You just, with so much offensive firepower, and they always say that great pitching is going to beat great hitting, but you just got to, and we talked about it before the show that, whatever it is, 12 of the last 16 years, the under has hit. So
it's 12 of the last 16.
I think it's 13 of the last 16.
13 of the last 16.
Coming into last night. Now it's 14 for 17 on the under at the All-Star game.
But and I just find that so funny. I know you have, in the All-Star game, you have a lot of people moving in and out of the lineup, moving around the field, players only playing half the game, pitchers only pitching 1 inning. And I just always think that with, pitchers are creatures of habit, creatures of routine. And I just feel like with these All-Star games, that with pitchers being so out of their routine, that their stuff just would be off or they wouldn't be as focused. Wow. But I guess that can go the same way for the hitters as well. So
certainly it went that way for Jordan Romano.
Yeah, I mean, hell, well, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in 2024 when I bet the over again.
Or in 2025 when the All-Star game is at Rogers Center?
I mean, yeah, in a perfect world.
That's the rumor.
That is the rumor. Yeah, I think it was between, who was that? I think Toronto, Baltimore, and I know there's one other city in there. But, I know I was talking about it before the show. Like, listen, it'd be really cool to have the All-Star game come here. I think that would be a lot of fun. But it's just, as someone who's just been dying for a new stadium here, it's frustrating for me that we're going to showcase these renovations, which look amazing. The stadium looks phenomenal. It's just the outside of that building and with all the waterfront that we have at this city, it would just be so nice to have a new stadium down by the waterfront. And with these renovations, it just doesn't feel like that's going to happen again anytime soon.
Listen to that. We don't deserve it, he says. No, we don't deserve to showcase the
deserve an All-Star
No. Don't show what we currently have. Let's build something bigger and better.
I never said we don't deserve to show it. I just say if it was up to me, we'd be showcasing, the new stadium new stadium that's not being built here in the next 5 seasons.
So you'd wait until 2029. Or 2039,
2049, who knows?
Well, yeah, let's think about if they're dumping 300 schmil into the Reno grappler, how long do you think it's going to be until they say, let's move?
There's a good chance I'm not going to have a non-gray hair on my head. My entire head is going to be gray by the time that happens.
Okay.
So that's at least 2-3 years tops.
Is that after you go to Turkey for the rebuild?
I've actually heard really good things about Iran as well.
Okay.
Oh, Iran.
Yeah.
Shopping around?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lots of options.
There's something no one's said in a long time. I've heard really good things about Iran, but in terms of getting the follicles fixed, if you want to go to Turkey, my friend, let's do it during the Turkish Super League season.
There you go.
Okay. So between August and May, I would love to join you. We're doing Istanbul, and we'll bookend it. However long, a few days you need for recovery. I'm not saying this is something you're considering, by the way. Did you insinuate this is something you're considering?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's something
that he's talking about years down the road.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying I'm not wishing baldness on
No, I didn't think that either.
I was actually just in Turkey last month in Kuşadesi.
Okay.
Which was quite lovely. So just throwing that out there. I was in and around the
grappler
area.
was on his honeymoon, and then the grappler was on a very luxurious sounding honeymoon where he toured many exotic destinations on the other side of the ocean.
I like that. Well, as much as we've talked about traveling the world and as many exotic destinations, we're going to get to a wealth of topics on the rest of today's show. We'll talk a little hockey. Jackie Redmond from the NHL Network on NHL on TNT and WWE Raw is going to join us on the other side of the break. This is OverDrive on TSN2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. Welcome back to OverDrive. My name is Brendan Dunlop. Happy to be alongside Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star as we carry you through on this Wednesday, MLB All-Star Week Wednesday. Made it to our third day, Dave. Pretty happy with that. And we have had plenty to talk about. It is a busy time in the hockey world, even though it is the summer. There's still some pieces to fall. There's still a lot of things in Toronto specifically to be sorted out. We don't have the ex-NHLer here today, but what you say we continue with the NHL conversation?
Let's do it.
Might as well. Very happy to bring on my old partner from the NHL Network now, NHL on TNT and WWE Raw. It's Jackie Redmond. Jackie, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Happy Wednesday. Excited to chat with you guys.
Yeah.
And always good to be reunited with you, Dunlop.
It's always good to chat with you. We were going to do it yesterday, but you had quite the travel nightmare. Now that you have to fly around for multiple jobs, I feel like the airport stress that follows anyone is just tripled for you now.
You know what is crazy? I've actually had such a great year in the travel department, but ever since the NHL draft, which is only a couple of weeks, but I've flown 7 times over that span, I have been cursed. When I went to leave for Nashville, I was delayed in Newark Airport for 10 hours, finally got on a plane and went to Nashville. But ever since that day, I have not had one solid travel experience yet, and I've flown, I think, 6 or 7 times since then. Sunday, I was supposed to fly to Buffalo, quick and easy. Flight got canceled. Rebooked flight got canceled. Third rebooked flight got canceled. So I ended up renting a car and driving 7 hours from New York to Buffalo to get to Monday Night Raw in time. And then obviously yesterday, I feel so awful that I stood you guys up, but it was unintentional. Blame the airlines. That is always the answer.
Jackie, I'm so intrigued by your line of work these days. We've known you for many years around here for your work on the NHL Network and various other hockey entities, but now you're doing a thing that I was obsessed with as a kid, pro wrestling. Tell us the story. How did you get involved, and what is your early sort of estimation of what this job is like compared to the other type of pro sports?
Well, I can say I've done 2 Monday Night Raws in this role now, and I can say with full confidence that it is a whole different world and animal than covering the NHL. Mm-hmm. Like, it is wild what the WWE does in terms of from a production standpoint. Not just once a week on Monday Night Raw, but twice a week. It's insane. Thousands of people behind the scenes putting it all together. And I guess, the short, easy answer for how different it is like, I don't want to brag or anything, but like, I'm kind of an actress now. I feel like
right.
I can add that. I'm seeing out what I interview players and coaches and different people around the league and talk about the sport of hockey. But in this case, like, someone's telling me, okay, this is the sort of question that we want you to ask, or like, this is what's happening here, and you're going to go and interview this person and ask them about this. And, I'm sort of a part of the show. So that's been very interesting and fun. And then
we'll get Jackie back.
Okay,
on the
let's
line.
get her back.
We'll try and
back.
reconnect.
This was getting good. I was interested in
I know.
The whole the way this all works, how they script the show.
It is a spectacle, and while the bones of what she's doing is the same for sports, as we just saw on the screen in interviewing these WWE superstars, it's very different because there's a guideline to follow,
right?
And
storyline, a soap opera.
One of the biggest differences between radio and TV is you have all this opportunity to ad lib.
Right.
In television, when I'm doing the highlight style show, I may have 30 seconds of what you would call freedom. Mm-hmm. 30 seconds evaporates when you also have to get in, some specific mention. You have to get into it a certain way. You're also teeing up, let's say, a highlight pack, and then you're trying to tell the story before we show you the plays.
Right.
There's not a lot of freedom there to ad lib, and it's a bit more controlled. In radio, I can take the conversation anywhere.
Exactly.
And the great thing about working with the grappler and you is we just have our pre-show meetings on the air.
Exactly.
Right? I didn't know we were going to go that long on social media in the first block.
There you go. All right, Jackie's back.
Jackie's back. Jackie, we're just getting into it. We're just getting into the real good questions about what it's like now interviewing these WWE superstars. You mentioned like being an actress. That's exactly what I was thinking, and I love watching. So how much freedom do you have? Like, they give you lines. I can't imagine it's like you got to say this 17-word sentence exactly like this, or is it just like a guideline and like you kind of see where the mood goes?
I don't want to get too
into the
inside
weeds
wrestling here, but
okay.
but I will say, it kind of depends what I'm doing. Like, I do interviews for other like supplementary or complementary programming as well, and there's a little bit more freedom there to kind of go different ways and ask follow-up questions that maybe weren't planned ahead of time. But in terms of Monday Night Raw, it's a 3-hour show, and if you ever watch Monday Night Raw, it is packed with stuff. So time is of the essence, as they say, and so usually it's a pretty direct like indication of where we're going. But I will say the interview subjects never lack personality, which is slightly different than the case sometimes covering the NHL.
We were just like you listen to our first block. We were literally just talking about that. How what a night and day difference that might be. So, okay, I won't press anymore on the inside WWE, but I will just say, because of our history, if there is a moment in which you're going to hit somebody with a chair, can I just get like the afternoon text before that happens to make sure that I'm watching? Because I feel like that's, because of our history, that's can't miss TV that I need to see.
Yes, I will absolutely send you a text that says something to the effect of, Raw might be interesting tonight, ...
Yeah. Outstanding. All right, into the less controversial stuff. Jackie, what are the Leafs going to do this summer? Right? Of all of the things happening right now, what are the Leafs going to do?
Does anybody know? I mean, the Leafs are actually, this is maybe one of the more intriguing off seasons for the Leafs, for me anyways, over the last handful of years, just because the team has already changed drastically already. They've lost so many players. They've already added new players to the lineup. So the Nylander situation becomes that much more intriguing, and I don't know what the right answer is. All I know is that if you look at William Nylander's history, right, like this is a player that I don't know if I can say this, but has guts. I'll say has guts instead of what I was originally going to say.
Pro move, very pro move. Great.
If William Nylander is going to get what William Nylander wants, because we've seen in the past that he's willing to wait until the absolute last second before coming to an agreement on a deal, right? And like, why does he have to rush anything? He doesn't really. I mean, his deadline is next summer, right? If he really wants it to be, if he's dead set on a certain number, and he can still be a Leaf this year. So I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know what Treliving is hoping for, but I do feel like William Nylander is in the driver's seat and sort of has the advantage in this negotiation. So it'll be interesting to see how Treliving navigates that. You know, obviously has a lot of experience, but this is his first offseason with the Leafs. So I think we'll learn a lot about how this is going to go with the whole team based on the way it goes with William Nylander and the way that Treliving plays his cards. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely intriguing, and you're right about Nylander. We were talking to Bruce Boudreau yesterday, Jackie, and Bruce remembered having William's father, Michael, with the Washington Capitals, and how he was, I believe Bruce used the term, a hard sign, meaning he liked to play contract hardball as well. And I think he's handed down that genetic mutation to his son, you know, and it's definitely a contract family that enjoys waiting to the last minute. But question for you, Jackie, to date, when you look at this team, they've, you know, given some 1-year deals to some players that, you know, Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi and John Klingberg. What have you made of those, and what are the, you know, what's your expectation about how those players could, you know, i.e. change the outlook in the forward lineup and in the decor in terms of Klingberg?
Well, I do like a lot of what the Leafs have done so far. I know the first day of free agency, people were sort of melting down over what was going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they follow it up with the Domi and Bertuzzi signings that you mentioned. So that was fun to watch from afar as well. Just I mean, it's so Leafs fans are so cliche, right? Just so dramatic one day, and then the complete opposite side of the spectrum the very next day when more signings happen. But to answer your question, I don't know. I mean, the idea that, you know, this team is trying to change the room a little bit and add character, which is a word that we throw around so much in this sport. Like, what does that actually mean? You know, is it toughness? Is it personality in the form of Ryan Reeves lightening the room and making it not, you know, quiet anymore? Because reportedly that's what it has been in the past, or that's its reputation for the Leafs, is that they have a quiet room. I don't know if just signing players that have personality or are tougher fixes that. You know what I mean? Especially when the core players are the likes of Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and John Tavares and William Nylander. We are who we are, right? I believe that, generally speaking. I don't know if you can necessarily change that just by adding different people to the room. And we've seen them try similar things in the past with older players, but players that, you know, bring that physical element or bring a little bit of personality. So I don't know that you can do that just by signing, you know, Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi and Ryan Reeves and being like, oh, there you go, we're tough now and our room's not quiet anymore and the entire personality of our team has changed. But I will say that I don't really know what to expect from the Leafs this season in terms of assessing their roster, because it is so different. I think the only thing that jumps off the page in terms of worrying me is the back end. Like, I don't feel good about the blue line at the moment. I'm sure I haven't been in Toronto in a while, but are we talking about that?
I think there's an assumption another shoe is going to drop here, Jack, and they're going to do more. But you're right. As it sits, it's not great.
No. And I wasn't, like, to be honest with you, like, I think they got a lot out of their blue line last year, but I wasn't fully satisfied with it last season, even though they did get a lot out of what they had. But, you know, what needs to happen for that other shoe to drop? I assume Nylander is probably maybe a part of that. And if it doesn't go the way they want it to, well, then what happens? What does plan B look like? Are they already on plan B, plan C? Like, where are they? I don't know. I think that's certainly something that will have to go the direction that Treliving wants it to if they want to be successful, because the blue line to me as is just isn't good enough when you look around the league at what other teams are offering back there.
We don't know where it's going to go, Jackie, and that's the beauty of it, because it gives us so much to talk about at the summer, in the middle of the summer here, as we anticipate the upcoming season. One of the big moves.
And so it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. The other thing is too, it's just like Klingberg comes in and like, good for him. He's going to try to prove he's still got it or whatever, and probably run the first power play. And even if you support that and support the notion that maybe Morgan Rielly shouldn't be up there, like what intangible impact does that have on Morgan Rielly and maybe the rest of the room, just in terms of the vibes? Mm-hmm. You know, like I don't know. I've never met someone like an athlete that's just like, yeah, I don't want to be on the first power play.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. I do think that some of the personalities that they brought in, and you were right to say, they've done this before with different characters. Ryan Reeves is just, he really is a unique and different character in comparison to everybody else. And what he brings on the ice is also different than what some of those other guys brought as well. Different stages in their career, of course. Joe Thornton was, I think, a bigger personality behind the scenes than maybe a lot of people realize. That was showcased very well in the Amazon documentary, and him and Marleau being dads to the young guys, essentially, right? It'll be different with Ryan Reeves and this dynamic where you do have a bit more, I think, kind of personality at a time too, when these young guys who were kind of criticizing for not being as personable are at different stages in their career, and I think different stages in their own lives too. So I'm very interested to see how it all comes together. One of the other players I want to...
Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
It's okay. You know why? It's just because it's been too long. Just means we got to do this more often. That's why.
I'm doing it for old time's sake, Brendan. I'm doing it for old time's sake. Just cut you off a few more times. But Ryan Reeves, not to bring this back to WWE, but like he's the type of player where I'm like, that's a guy that would absolutely fit in that world. If you were to take hockey players and pick who could be WWE superstars,
100%.
He would certainly be one in terms of his personality and charisma. And I think, maybe it's, is Ryan Reeves the type of person or personality that can go in that room and just lighten the mood a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think necessarily that the Leafs, need to have more personality or be this like super tough physical team or anything like that. But I do think that like the pressure has done nothing but build since Austin Matthews got there year after year, and with, first round exit after first round exit. And then, okay, we won like 2 extra games this year, but we still, exited early for a team that's supposed to have Stanley Cup aspirations. Can Ryan Reeves be the type of person, and maybe some of the other additions as well, that can come in and just like lighten the mood a little bit, in the sense that like take the weight of the world off these guys a little bit, so that they can flourish a little bit more? And it is interesting because, and I don't know if this would have been on the Canadian broadcast as well, but I do remember in the first round series against Tampa, and it wasn't before Game 6, it was an earlier game in the series, maybe Game 4, Game 5, I don't really remember, but I do remember that TNT showed each dressing room before puck drop. And one dressing room was super quiet and intense, and everybody was sitting and no one was really talking, and it was quiet and there was no music playing, and I think Sheldon Keefe was talking, and it was very subdued, and that was the Leafs room. And then Tampa's room, music was blaring, guys were walking around, there was no like speech happening, it was very loose. And I know Tampa didn't go on to win that series, but I remember thinking in that moment, like, what a contrast in attitude or energy coming out of each room. And so I think if the Leafs can find a way, and who knows, maybe their room's not always like that. I saw, 10 seconds, but I do think if they can find a way to just lean into who they are and not let that pressure affect them so much, maybe they can be a little bit more successful in the postseason, because when they're playing in the regular season, they've been dominant.
There's a lot of people listening that would agree with you. I definitely agree with you on that front as well. And while it may have only been, a brief sample, as you say, 10 seconds, you certainly weren't surprised by it, right? It matched what you thought.
Like, of course.
Yeah.
I was like, of course.
I also love that you threw out there how Ryan Reeves would be great as a crossover for WWE. And I just want you to know, whether it's this show I'm doing or whatever show it is, you want to use that as your platform to like kind of tease Nick Khan with the crossover options available. We can totally do that, right? Go a top 5 list, bring back some alumni, get Briz Galov out there. Like I think there's a real world here, Jackie, that we can develop here together. I've always wanted to be a writer. You know this, right? Maybe a WWE writing is where I should end up.
Listen, Freddie Prinze Jr. was there once upon a time. So, WWE writing team, you never know.
Great hair,
Have
Freddie
some
Prinze
good stories
Jr.
up your sleeve.
Jackie, I
knew you would say that.
I love talking hockey with you. Thanks so much for doing this, and best of luck flying around America through the rest of the summer. I hope it's easier for you.
Hey, thanks so much. A pleasure chatting with you guys. Have a great rest of your show and a great summer if I don't see or speak to either of you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jackie.
Jackie Redmond from NHL Network, the NHL on TNT, and WWE Raw. I enjoyed that. Didn't think we'd get into as much wrestling as we did. Lots more to get into. Doug Gilmour still to come in the show. We'll speak with Brett Boone a bit later. This is OverDrive on TSN2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Just one game from last night, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, a low-scoring 3-2. So if you took the over, we certainly feel bad for you. We'll get into
Poor grappler.
Or the poor grappler, yeah. He's not alone, I'm sure. There's a few others. We're going to get into plenty more. Doug Gilmour is next on OverDrive. Don't go anywhere. You're watching on TSN2, listening on TSN 1050 and the iHeartRadio app.